Welcome to another exciting edition of the Trading Bell. This week on the show, we've been telling you that we'll be focusing on both the big and the upcoming. And one of the upcoming players in the space is Edenbridge Capital. And we are delighted to be speaking to the Managing Director, Mr. Reuben Kimani. We'll be dissecting through what does the business look like and what are the opportunities in the Kenyan market. Thank you, sir, for joining us on the Trading Bell, and such a pleasure to have you on board.
Thank you, Abby, for the invite.
And Mr. Kimani, Kenyans have been very, very keen to see uptake of cheap loans in the market. We've just seen the biggest development this week being about the digital lenders, for example, where the central bank has cleared 10 companies out of 288. Just to break the ice, how big is the appetite for capital in Kenya?
Thanks again, Abby, for the invite to this show. I can say the appetite for capital in this market is really huge because we are having a situation where we are having a lot of incoming entrepreneurs and the number is growing by the day. And the situation also, the biggest challenge is that most of these entrepreneurs can't access credit from the banks, which again brings the aspect of the interest rates. And when we adjust the second aspect of interest rates, there are several components that determine the interest rates that financial institutions give. One is the aspect of inflation, cost of funds, the risk appetite, operation cost, and the margins by the banks. And the biggest challenge that we're having in this market is that all banks have interest rates that are fit for all. So you go to any bank, you're told the interest rate is X, whether you are a risky customer or not a risky customer. And what you're currently advocating, and also in the microfinance sector, and especially Edenbridge Capital Limited, we are looking at a space where we are using data to evaluate our customers such that no two clients have the same interest rate, because you're using something called the risk-based pricing. So what happens when a client comes in, we look at your data, and out of that we're able to price you and get the proper interest rate for you.
Interesting. And I'm just curious, Kenyans, we do know Eden as the Garden of Eden. And just walk us through Edenbridge. You've been in the business for how long, and what informs the name, and how has been business so far?
Thanks again. Edenbridge has been around for 3.5 years now. It's an indigenous microfinance institution. We offer loans, insurance, trade finance and trade finance products, that's bid bonds and guarantees to our customers. And our customers are micro, small and medium enterprises. Yeah, interesting about the Edenbridge. So when you're coming up with the name, we thought we need to take our customers to the Eden. You know, Eden is a land of plenty. And the way to do that, we have to create a platform where they go to Eden. That's why Eden and the bridge. The bridge is the route to that Eden. Thank you.
Interesting. So how is the farm positioning itself, especially now that there's a lot of competition in the space that you are in?
Edenbridge, we are a unique organization, and I know there's a lot of competition right from banks, SACCOs, cooperatives, and also competitors within the market, within the financial sector. And what we said is that one thing we're going to do is that we're going to be customer-centric. So customer comes first in our business. And what we've done is that we've worked around the customer. All our touch points, everyone knows, and everyone is well aligned to the fact that we are a customer-based organization. We develop products that are tailor-made for particular customers. And also we make sure that every time a customer walks into our door, they feel as if they're kings. I know there's been a bit of misconception around credit-onlys and some other guys called Shylocks. And what we said as an organization is that we're going to bring the professional aspect into alternate lending, so that when you can't get financial services from the bank, then the first institution that comes to mind is Edenbridge Capital Limited.
All right, interesting. And moving this conversation forward, of course, the Kenya's financial sector has one of the highest interest rates. And what opportunities lie out there for microfinance players like yourselves? And in terms of sourcing this capital, how is it like? Just give us a picture.
I can say there's enormous opportunity in this country. And what we've seen, especially in our space, is that most of the companies that come to our space are foreign companies. And you ask yourself, what is the space for indigenous companies? And that's why we're very deliberate about setting Edenbridge Capital in this market. And we are working in a space where customers complain that the interest regime in this country is a bit high. But as I alluded earlier, there are several components that drive the aspect of interest rate. And one of them is the aspect of risk. And what we are doing as an institution, just making sure that we understand our customers differently, and we just don't lump them up together. We are really investing in data just to make sure that our algorithms are really good, such that when a customer walks in, we're able to evaluate you within the shortest time possible, and we're able to price your risk and price your product really well. Mm-hmm. Another thing is the aspect of operation cost. And cost is everything in business. And what we are trying to invest in and what we're investing in this market is technology, in that to create a very efficient business. And once we take care of the aspect of cost, the aspect of risk, then we're able to give a very affordable rates to our customers.
All right. And talking about customers, the ecosystem has been evolving. When you look at the type of customers that are going for products like what you offer, we are seeing a lot of interest coming in from the diaspora market. Just give us an overview. How is business for the diaspora? Are you seeing an area that you can also play in?
Diaspora market has become really big in this country. I know for the longest time, we'd almost forgotten the diaspora market.
Yeah.
And when you look at data, even during COVID time, we saw the diaspora remittance going up by the day. Yeah, and surprisingly today, the biggest foreign earner for this country is diaspora remittance, which basically means that Kenyans who are out there are remitting funds back home for various needs, one for development, two to support their families in here. And one of the challenges I think they face there, and what we're looking at their needs just to see how we can create very good products for them. And we look at their needs, and some of the things is that these guys want to invest around. But what they lack is a trusted partner who can help them invest in this country. So currently we are creating a product around that, such that we can even help them in terms of they want to develop, they want to invest around, then they have a platform that they can do that well. Mm-hmm. Some of these diaspora clients do send remittances to support their parents and relatives around. Mm-hmm. And one of the biggest challenges they face is some things like medical. And we've developed a product where they can even purchase medical products for their parents. We usually say any middle-class person is one hospital bill away from poverty. Mm-hmm. And also investment products in that if they have children around, they can take education policy that helps them to pay fees, and that will make sure that whatever they channel goes to development.
All right. And we've covered quite a lot about how the company started off and, of course, the areas of interest. I'm curious to hear from you. How is the performance of the company in terms of turnover, as well as what do you see in your future outlook, especially now that the political transition is over?
The outcome, we've been operational for 3.5 years. We are in 6 locations. Our head office is on Kimani Street, IPS building, 3rd floor. And I can say so far so good. I know we've gone through very turbulent moments. By the time we were hitting our 1st year anniversary, COVID checks in. For any leader, that was a very challenging moment. I quit COVID time to driving through a fog, in that you can't see where you are going, but you still have to keep on moving. Then when you set off COVID period, this year when we lifted off the curfew, then we go to the election space. But due to proper corporate governance in the organization, in that we are very deliberate about corporate governance right from the onset, when we started this company, where we have a board, and we are audited by a tier 2 audit firm. And just to make sure there's an aspect of responsibility, we have a leadership team that is quite experienced. The company has managed to steer through those turbulent moments, and we can say we are growing. Currently, we are a $10 million business. That's roughly about 1 billion Kenya shillings. And with the new, now that we are done with the elections, COVID, we can say almost COVID is gone. And we are seeing a new government, and what is I'm seeing around, even with my customers and with my interactions, that Kenyans are really optimistic. And we see some of the conversations they are talking about developing the aspect of agriculture and agriculture value chain, the aspect of industrialization, which brings me to a country like India, which did that awesomely well, where they created a cocktail of the industrial revolution, the agricultural revolution, and the tech revolution, bringing this together in a space where we are told about 75% of our adult population is below 35. So you have a very energetic team. We have a very energetic population and a very young population, which basically means labor is there. So the only way we can go as a country is up, and the only way we can go as a company is up.
All right. Speaking about all the way up, I'm just curious to hear from you in terms of, so what are your next future steps, especially now that you're already in 6 locations? Do you plan to expand this further? And also, perhaps in the long-term future, are you also considering being a listed company at the stock exchange?
Yeah, sure. In the near future, we plan to have our outreach across the country and making sure we have a presence in each and every county, touching each and every life, because our biggest business is financial intermediation. And as we said earlier, one of the biggest challenges in this country is capital. So there's a young entrepreneur setting up their business. Where do they access capital? When they go to banks, you remember very well after IFRS 9 checked in, banks said no to microcloans, and most of them pushed them to digital lending. But again, you know, as Africans, we love touch. We are very relational, and that's the space we play in. And one of the biggest challenges that we face for any entrepreneur, including myself, is the access of capital. And one of the places where you can access capital easily, I believe it is the Nairobi Stock Exchange. And so in part of our growth strategy, as we plan to grow and extend our outreach across the country and in the near future even across Africa, because we want to be the leading microfinance institution in Africa, we are going to tap some of the capital from Nairobi Stock Exchange.
And as we come to the near tail end of this conversation, you've touched on a very important nerve. This is the digital lenders. And it's currently one of the big issues in the country right now. And from where you sit, what opportunities does this present to you as a microfinance now that we are seeing the regulator is cracking the whip on those players who are not fully compliant? What opportunities are there for companies like yourselves?
I see there's a lot of opportunity once again. We had a proliferation of digital institutions. Some of them were not really acting in the best interest of their customers. We would see scenarios where you've borrowed from a company, then shortly they decide to embarrass you to your whole phone network. And what happens is that aspect of credit and finance is about dignity. You have to give dignity to your clients. And I really applaud what CBK has done in that bringing the regulation regime in place, and also the aspect of customer protection, and just making sure that this product offering is not abused and guys play within stipulated rules, just to make sure, even as we serve customers, we're serving them in a dignified way. And I can say I've done a little study about digital lending, and I realized that given the aspect of how Kenyans operate, we are more relational. And so digital can't operate in isolation. So you must have the aspect of digital and touch, what we call tech and touch. And I think that's the future in terms of financial sector in this country.
So do you feel regulating the digital lenders will bring sanity into the financial space? Because the CBK had at one time made a remark that said some of these lenders were like loan sharks.
Yeah, sure. Regulation will bring sanity in this market, but also we say, I think the players in that market had a sitting with CBK just to make sure that also it does not suffocate the business. And what happens is that we are moving in a space where we want to make sure that credit is easily accessible to individuals. And bringing regulation will make sure that people behave in a particular manner. We avoid predatory pricing. Also, we act in terms of customer protection, in that data protection is there, giving our clients dignity, and also the aspect that someone can borrow with confidence and know that their data is secure. Yeah.
And as we bring this to a close, Mr. Kimani, corporate governance is very vital in the financial sector. And we've seen some rogue players taking away very unsuspecting Kenyans who have lost their wealth, they've lost their money through institutions that were not compliant. And as an organization that would say is just crossing the league of a startup, how have you been able to deal with issues of corporate governance? Is this still work in progress? And what impact does good corporate governance have on an institution?
Corporate governance helps an institution to make sure that everyone is well aligned for the betterment of the organization. And as an institution, right from the point of formation, we are very clear that we wanted to grow. And the only way to grow is just making sure that, one, there's accountability, there's transparency, there's independence, and everyone is responsible. And we had to sit down and say, how do we go about it? So we had to make sure that, one, we have a board, and a very experienced board at it. My chairman is about 60 years old. Has about 35 years experience in finance and banking. And most of my board members have experience in finance and also business development. And we're very clear as an institution that this is not a one-man show. There has to be checks and balances, and that's why the board is there. On top of that, just to make sure that we don't lose our focus and making sure that our eyes are always on the ball, we had to make sure that you're audited by a tier 2 audit firm. I know at the point of starting, not only financial sector, but any business, you think hiring a top audit firm is quite expensive. But again, it aids a business to make sure that, one, you're playing within the required standards. Number two, you're very clear to your mission and vision as an organization, and making sure the company has the right structures and these structures are not abused. So I'd say people might think corporate governance and setting in a board that comes to check you might be a hindrance to the business, but in the fullness of time, it helps the company to grow. And also it makes sure that as a company, basic aspects like what we've seen Kenyans lose money, and if you look at those companies where Kenyans have lost money, there's no corporate governance. It was one man deciding what to do, or even if they had a board of directors, they were all aligned to the wrong thing. But again, I believe in any institution, one, you must have values. Like in our institution, you have habits where everyone has to subscribe to, right from the chairman to the salesperson. And these habits have helped us build a culture, and these cultures help us grow as a company.
Interesting. Yeah. And as we close, one of the things I always take on our guests here is some leadership lessons that you may want to pass on to the next generation. Especially, we've seen a number of Kenyans not so keen in investing in companies. They prefer just keeping their chamas and contributing and doing a merry-go-round. But we're also seeing companies are trying to develop avenues that such like chamas can also invest. I'd like to hear your take on this, as well as, of course, looking at the big conversation around people and running a business. What would be your tips, especially to avoid a plateau in your business?
I would say, I'd just like to encourage Kenyans that, we're used to very traditional ways of investing. One of the best ways to invest is, according to Kenyans, is buy land. Because if you look even at chamas, when they pull money, the first thing they do is look for land. And what has happened is that over time we've seen guys buy very unproductive land. While if they look at other aspects of investment, if I look at today, for instance, the Nairobi Stock Exchange has a lot of companies there. And chamas can come in, pull their funds together and say, we're investing in this particular company. We are looking at having maybe a particular shareholding where we can even propose to have a director and even play in the management of that company and ultimately learn lessons from it, or even pull funds and set up a company. One of the biggest challenges you have in this country is that, again, the shortage of capital. If you go to advanced markets like Singapore, America, and a bit of Europe, you'll find that there's something we call family funds, where particular families put their funds together and they say, these funds, we're going to use it as seed capital for upcoming institutions or upcoming companies. And this is a space where I think a lot of education has to go to our people, in that when you pull funds, you don't just have to buy land. You don't have to buy the matatu. You can invest in an upcoming company, and what you need to do is learn how to evaluate a company, right from the leadership, the guys driving the business, how experienced are they, their business model, their markets, and their route to market. Then from there, you'll see your funds grow in an exponential manner.
All right.
And more to also to upcoming businessmen. One thing I like just to challenge them is that leadership can be very lonely, and at times can be very lonely. Entrepreneurship is very lonely. Yeah. And one thing I like to encourage them, always make sure you have a mentor. Someone who can walk with you, becomes your sounding board whenever you have something, someone who can help you not to lose your vision and focus. And also when you're hiring your team, and we love being the sharpest cookies in our companies, make sure you're hiring people who are brighter than you. I remember this time when Henry Ford, there was a whole rumor that he never knew much about cars. And when it was taken before a journalist, he came with a whole team. And whenever a question would be asked, he'd push it to one person. And he said the biggest strength of the company is the team that drives that business. Yeah.
Wow, what a way to end this conversation.
Sure.
Such a powerful nugget there.
Yeah.
And I'd like to get your parting shot, especially as a business, which sectors Have you seen growth and funding specifically? Where do you see most of the business funds going towards, even as the economy picks up after quite a lull that was linked to the elections?
Also, one of the areas where I see a lot of opportunity, one is in agriculture. And I'm not talking about subsistence agriculture, I'm talking about agribusiness, where we look at the whole value chain of agriculture, right from preparation of the land, all the way to the various players within that particular value chain. Because what you're looking at, we say that when the population is growing, one demand that will always be there is a demand for food. And as a country today, initially we used to say the backbone of our economy is agriculture. But over time, we are seeing we've become a net importing company. We're importing eggs, we're importing potatoes. The other day, there was an uproar around importation of potatoes. And I think it's time that, one, we looked at the aspect of land and land subdivision, in that agricultural land is left for agricultural land, and encourage more young people to go back to farming, because I believe as a country we can be food sufficient. We've seen countries like Egypt being very deliberate around this. And the ultimate effect is that when you look at the value chain of agriculture, right from the production of the crop to the processing, which again brings the aspect of cottage industry, we can create a lot of jobs through there, and there are a lot of opportunities in agri today.
All right.
Yeah.
Many thanks for your time.
Sure, thanks a lot.
And looking forward to seeing the company's performance.
Yeah, sure.
In the
and we
next
look forward
couple
to
of months.
Better interaction and also to listing in the Nairobi Stock Exchange.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
Well, we've been speaking there to Mr. Reuben Kimani, the Managing Director at Edenbridge Capital Limited, just giving us insights into the genesis of the business as well as where the business is headed. He's quite optimistic that things will be leveling off and Kenyans' appetite for credit will be served. Well, that brings us to the end of this week's show. It's been a pleasure bringing you all the latest from the stock exchange. My name is Abi Agina. On behalf of the entire team, we say bye-bye for now, and we leave you with a look at the markets for this week.